Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel, and this story doesn't start at the beginning. It starts in the middle of a lie. Her ring was still sitting on the windowsill when the Uber pulled away. No note, no goodbye. Just the faint smell of her perfume and the silence of someone who doesn't care if she's caught anymore. I stared at that ring for a long time. 5 tiny diamonds in a clean white gold band. She used to call it her forever sparkle. Now it looked like a souvenir from a game I didn't realize I was losing. I didn't follow her. I didn't text her. I didn't pretend this was normal. Instead, I opened the drawer under the sink. Not for weapons or drama, just for the old burner phone I hadn't touched since 2019. That phone was my version of her missing ring. A piece of me I hoped I'd never have to use again. But if she was allowed to pretend she wasn't married for the weekend, then I was allowed to stop pretending I didn't know. She thought I didn't notice her logging into Instagram on private mode, that I didn't hear her giggle at texts while turning her screen away from me, that I didn't catch the scent of cologne in her hair once, something I'd never worn. But I noticed everything. I always did. I just wore a better mask. She left for a girls' weekend with a bag full of lies and a body full of secrets. And while she was posting boomerangs with her wine glass and tagging fake locations, I was meeting someone I hadn't seen in 3 years. The man I used to be before I married her. The man who stopped asking questions because he was tired of hearing excuses. The man who knew how to dig. She wasn't the only one with plans that weekend. Because I had mine too. The burner phone flickered to life slower than I remembered. I had to blow dust out of the charging port and sit through 3 full system updates. While the screen loaded, I walked around the house like a ghost. Everything felt artificial. The framed photos, the untouched bookshelves, the throw pillows she used to obsess over. It was like living inside a staged home meant to impress strangers, not shelter a marriage. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't decide if it was anger, anxiety, or some twisted kind of freedom. She was gone for 72 hours. That gave me enough time to crack what she thought was airtight. I started small. I scrolled through her public socials first. Nothing unusual. Pictures of cocktails, a beach towel, an overhead shot of a charcuterie board. Classic girls' weekend stuff. But then I checked the metadata on one of the screenshots she sent me. The location tag didn't match. She said they were in Gig Harbor. The tag said Capitol Hill. And not the scenic part either, the nightlife district. I wasn't looking for confirmation of cheating. I already had that. I was hunting for the timeline. I needed to know when it started, who the man was, how many times I'd made dinner while she was with him. And the burner, that was for someone else entirely. I texted a number I hadn't used in 3 years. Still in Seattle? The reply came faster than I expected. Wow, didn't think you'd ever reach out. What's going on? I told him the truth. The guy's name was Drex, don't laugh. Drex used to do freelance surveillance for local attorneys. We crossed paths years ago when I needed help tracking down a client who skipped out on paying for some custom bike work. Now I needed him for something bigger. I asked if he could trace a hotel keycard check-in based on a partial location. He said yes, if I gave him 24 hours and a clean reason. I said my marriage was rotting from the inside, and I was done scrubbing the mold. He didn't ask more. That night, I slept on her side of the bed. Not because I missed her, but because I wanted to know what it felt like to finally stop lying to myself. The morning after she left, I found her wedding ring exactly where she'd left it, still glinting on the windowsill, taunting me. I didn't touch it. I didn't move it. I just stared at it while the kettle boiled, wondering if there had ever been a time when it actually meant something to her. Drex texted me around 9 a.m. Found your hotel. Room 1512. Booked under R Lane. Arrived Friday night. Checked in with 1 guest. My heart stalled. I didn't know anyone named R Lane. She didn't have relatives with that last name. That meant alias. That meant planning. That meant this wasn't new. I asked Drex if he could send security footage. He said it would cost more. I told him to do it. The money didn't matter anymore. Not when the foundation of my marriage had already caved in. While I waited, I sat on the floor of the closet, the one she never let me organize. Inside one of her purses, I found a receipt for a spa day, dated 6 weeks ago, charged to a card I didn't recognize. But the email on the booking was hers. I opened our shared credit card app. Nothing there. She had another account, probably under a maiden name, probably for a long time. My brain started stitching things together like a crime board, the gym visits, the sudden interest in exfoliating masks, the new clothes she called hand-me-downs from Kelsey. No woman wears a silk dress worth $300 unless she's trying to be remembered by someone. By noon, I was shaking so bad I dropped my mug. Coffee soaked the carpet, but I didn't clean it. I didn't move. I just sat there. Finally, Drek sent me a still image from the hotel lobby. There she was, Corinne, in heels I'd never seen, hair curled in waves, leaning against a man in a navy suit, her hand on his chest like she belonged there. She looked happier in that grainy frame than she had in the last 2 years of our life. I zoomed in. Her eyes were closed. She wasn't worried about who saw her. She thought I never would. That was her mistake. Mine was assuming love and loyalty were the same thing. By the time evening rolled around, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a legal pad in front of me, not because I wanted to write anything down, but because I needed to see how far I'd fallen. I listed out every time she said, "I'm just tired. I'm just busy. It's just work stuff." I wrote down every excuse she fed me like breadcrumbs while she was probably tangled in hotel sheets somewhere else. Drek sent another message, this time a short clip. Just 7 seconds, but it was enough. Her lips on his neck in the hotel elevator, head tilted, hair swept back the way she only did for date nights she cared about. I watched it 3 times, then deleted it. I didn't want to keep poison in my pocket, but the damage was done. That night, I called her mother. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to hear someone who'd known her longer than I had. She answered groggily and was surprised to hear from me. I asked if she'd spoken to Corinne lately. There was a pause. Then she said, "No, not since she told me about the retreat." Retreat? That wasn't the story I got. My wife was spinning different tales like a spider in heat. I thanked her and hung up. I wasn't angry anymore. I was unraveling. I walked into the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I looked older, pale, smaller somehow. I'd become a man who accepted being ignored, who believed her indifference was just exhaustion, not disinterest. But it wasn't exhaustion. It was a woman quietly replacing her life without having the decency to bury the old one. I opened my email and searched for Lane. Nothing. Then I searched her cloud account. There it was, a backup file linked to an old iPad we barely used anymore. And inside that backup, messages, dozens. A whole thread titled, "Will be real soon." I clicked and read every detail, every lie, every promise she made him that used to be mine. "When I'm with you, I don't feel married. He doesn't touch me anymore. He's like a shadow." I didn't cry. I smiled. That was the first time I'd smiled in days. Not because it was funny, but because I finally understood. She left her ring behind because she'd already removed me from her life. I didn't sleep that night, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. Sleep felt like surrender, and I wasn't done being awake to the truth. Around 3 a.m., I got up and walked through the house like I was seeing it for the first time. The furniture we picked out together now felt staged. The little trinkets from vacations, Paris, Vancouver, Napa, each one now looked like a trophy from a different lie. I stopped in front of the framed photo from our 3rd anniversary. She had her head on my shoulder. I zoomed in with my phone camera, scanned the smile on her lips. It looked real back then. But now I wondered how many of those smiles were performances. I opened the drawer by her side of the bed. She never let me go through her things, but that rule didn't apply anymore. Inside, I found a small leather notebook. Tucked into the back was a folded piece of stationery with handwriting that wasn't hers. "Can't wait to wake up next to you for real." G.G. Grant? Greg? God? Who knows? But that wasn't even the worst part. The note was dated 2 months ago. 2 months. While I was fixing her broken taillight, while I was helping her mother with surgery, while I was making her favorite meals and asking if she needed anything, I was competing with a ghost I hadn't even known existed. And I was losing. Miserably. The next morning, I did something uncharacteristic. I made breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, orange juice, the whole spread. But not for her. For me. Because I realized I'd been living on emotional crumbs for years, and this was the first time I did something that felt like kindness. To myself. I ate in silence, watching the driveway through the blinds. I didn't know what I'd do when she returned. Confront her? Pretend? Or vanish? The old me would have waited with questions, but this version of me, the one without the mask, was finally learning that closure is often just the polite version of revenge. and I wasn't feeling polite anymore. She walked through the door like nothing had happened. That was the part that hit the hardest. No guilt in her eyes, no tension in her shoulders. Just the scent of travel-size perfume and the clack of heels I'd never seen before. She tossed her overnight bag onto the couch, smiled faintly, and said, "Miss me?" It wasn't a joke. It wasn't flirtation. It was a test. I nodded slowly, fighting every nerve in my body that wanted to scream. "How was the girls' weekend?" I asked, watching for cracks. She stretched her arms and yawned, relaxing. We got massages, drank too much, barely slept. "You know how it goes," I did. I knew exactly how it went. I knew her room number, the fake name she used to check in, the man she wrapped herself around in the elevator. I knew more than she thought I ever would. And yet I played along because part of me needed to see how far she'd go with the lie. "You look different," I said. "Tired?" She laughed. "You always say that when I come back from a trip." "Maybe I need better concealer." She started unpacking in front of me, casually, like this was just another Sunday night. That's when I noticed something strange. She removed a small zippered pouch, the same one she used to carry jewelry. I expected to see her wedding ring inside. Instead, she slid it into her jeans pocket without hesitation, like it had never meant anything more than a piece of metal. She wasn't hiding it. She just didn't care anymore. And that somehow felt worse than 1,000 confessions. That night, we sat in the same room, breathing the same air, pretending to exist in the same life. But we weren't married anymore. We were just two strangers, each playing a part, afraid of who would break the script first. I kept looking at the door, wondering which one of us would walk through it for the last time. The silence between us didn't feel like tension anymore. It felt like strategy. Every word she said that week was rehearsed, filtered, designed to leave no trace. She was careful, almost too careful, the way someone acts after they've gotten away with something and now fear being reckless. But what she didn't know was that I had stopped being the audience. I was no longer watching, I was recording, mentally, emotionally, and literally. Drex had delivered again, a full pull from the hotel's security feed. 6 clips, time-stamped, sorted, and more damning than anything I could have imagined. She hadn't just met him in the lobby, they'd walked in together, checked in like a married couple, kissed in the elevator, and disappeared into the room without a second glance. They didn't even hesitate. That was what destroyed me the most. There was no fear in her body language, no hesitation in her eyes, just ease, comfort, like she belonged to someone else now, and had for a while. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I knew she was planning something, a slow fade, a gentle exit, the kind cowards prefer so they don't have to look at the mess they've made. So I flipped the script. I started sleeping on the couch, claiming I was having back pain. I stopped texting her during the day. No more check-ins, no more sweet notes left in her car. I became the version of me she'd been describing to him in those messages. Distant, withdrawn, uninspired. It wasn't a lie. I was becoming that man. Not because I didn't love her, but because she'd convinced herself I was already gone. The day after that shift began, she left her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while showering. She never used to do that. I don't know if it was arrogance or laziness, but I took it as an invitation. I scrolled, and there it was, a draft message. It's getting harder to pretend. No recipient yet, no send. Just saved, waiting. And for the first time, I felt like I had the answer to a question I hadn't wanted to ask. She wasn't just cheating, she was planning her exit, and she wanted me to stay silent long enough to make it easy. I didn't wait for her to send that message. I didn't need to. Her silence had already said everything. That morning I brewed coffee like I always did, 2 mugs just out of habit. She came downstairs wrapped in her robe, scrolling on her phone, smiling at something I'd never get to see. She looked up and said, "You okay?" I nodded, placed a white envelope on the table, and slid it toward her. "Yeah, I just needed some time to put things in writing." She looked confused until she opened it and saw the papers inside. My resignation from the role of being her emotional placeholder. Divorce docs. No drama, no accusations. Just the truth, finally written down. Her eyes widened, but not in shock, more like guilt catching up to her. "Ellery," she started, but I held up a hand. "You took off your ring for a weekend." I took off my mask for good. She didn't fight. She didn't cry. Maybe part of her had been hoping I'd do this first. That way, she wouldn't have to be the villain. I let her keep the house. I packed my clothes, my camera, my father's old watch, and left before noon. No grand exit, no angry words, just peace. Real peace. Not the fake kind we used to sell to our friends at dinner parties. Weeks passed, then a month. Now, I live in a small apartment above the bike shop. Quiet, simple, honest. I've started photography again, portraits mostly. I've even met someone who buys me coffee without asking for anything in return. It's strange, learning to breathe again. But it's real. And for the first time in years, I feel like myself. Not a shadow, not a substitute. Me. Sometimes it takes being betrayed to remember your worth. Sometimes it takes watching someone remove their ring to realize how long they'd been removing their love. But if you're lucky, really lucky, you catch it in time to start over. I did, and I'm not looking back. Thanks for sticking with me through this story on Reddit Confessions. Before you go, drop a comment below. What's one powerful moment in history where someone walked away from everything and built something better? Let's talk resilience, truth, and fresh starts, right here on Reddit Confessions.